here. We're gonna need that one, the 16, 15, and the 3rd gen SE4. There we go, let's pop those back down there. Because as you know, Apple have just unveiled the iPhone 16e, the successor to the SE 3rd generation. The SE name apparently is dead now, and it's just the 16e, E for entry level perhaps, they don't really specify, but before you go out and buy one, which you can as of the 28th of February, although you can pre-order them now, I thought it would be worth going through the differences between the old 3rd gen SE, the iPhone 15, which you can still buy, and the iPhone 16. This costs £100 more than the 16e. This is $200 more than the 16e. Same prices in dollars as well. So should you get the 16e, or one of these a better option? And how much of an upgrade actually is it over this cute little guy? I'm going to miss this. Now, obviously, this is not a review of the new 16e because I don't have one yet. I have ordered one, so my full review will be coming soon. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and ding that bell and all those annoying YouTuber things. But firstly, let's talk about the differences, the upgrades from the SE 3rd generation, which actually came out 3 years ago, March 2022. And there's actually an awful lot. In fact, to keep track, I'll put a little list here. The first thing you'll notice is the size difference. We've gone from 4.7 to 6.1 inches. And if I use the 16 as a reference, a sort of size guide, because it's effectively the same as the 16e, you can see you're getting a lot more space on the screen there. But also, it is a bigger phone, especially in the height. I wouldn't have been against them keeping it the same size as this, but just, reducing the bezels and giving us more screen in this space. But no, it does also mean, of course, they've got rid of the home button. Because they've shrunk the bezels right down, we now have a notch with Face ID rather than Touch ID with a home button. We've also gone from an IPS to an OLED display. The brightness has been bumped up from about 625-ish nits to around 1200 nits of peak brightness, although that is still not quite as bright as the 15 and 16, but we'll come to that in a second. They've also, thankfully, changed the Lightning port to USB-C, so now the entire iPhone lineup uses USB-C, and we also now get the Action button. We've also gone from a glossy to a matte back, like we have on the 15 and the 16. In the US, it is now eSIM only on the new 16e, whereas the previous 3rd gen SE could still have a physical SIM card. That is only for the US though, but might make it a little bit tricky for you to upgrade. The 16e is also the first phone to use Apple's own in-house C1 modem, so they're not using a Qualcomm modem chip anymore, they're using their own one, which apparently is a lot more efficient, but we'll have to do some testing. And speaking of performance, we've gone from the A15 Bionic chip to the A18, which is the same chip you have in the iPhone 16, except the GPU, the graphics, has one fewer core. It's got 4 cores rather than 5 cores. So that should be a huge bump over this guy. Although more importantly, I think, is the fact that the base storage has doubled from 64 to 128 gigs. And they've doubled the memory from 4 gigabytes to 8 gigabytes, the same as the iPhone 16, which means, yes, it does support Apple Intelligence, which this does not. And in terms of the camera, we've gone from a single 12 megapixel to a single 48 megapixel, which on paper is very similar to the iPhone 16, although there are a couple of downgrades, and we'll come to that in a second. We've also got a much improved selfie camera, also now 12 megapixels, up from 7, also with a wider aperture, and we're getting their smart HDR5 processing rather than HDR4, which we get on this old model. So while I will test this and do side-by-sides in my full review, the camera, on paper at least, should be a big upgrade. They've also near enough doubled the battery life. We're going from 10 hours to 21 hours of streamed video playback. That's nuts. The only issue is it's also quite a lot more expensive. This launched at around £429 in the UK. The 16e starts at $599. Yes, you are getting double the storage, which is very much appreciated, but that's quite a big jump in price. If we'd gone from $429, whatever it was, to $499, I think that would have made the 16e a lot more competitive. But hey, inflation, lots of upgrades, Apple can do what they want, but it is a lot more expensive now. But the question then is, should you buy the new iPhone 16e or pay a little bit more and get an iPhone 15 or even 16? Well, let's find out. And starting with the 15, which is still on sale, you can still buy it new from Apple. And in the UK and US, this will cost you $100 more than 16e. $599, $699. Is it worth it? Well, the first thing you'll notice is we have the dynamic island rather than the notch. We also have a brighter screen. The 16e can go up to about 1200 nits in high brightness mode. This can go up to 1600 and can peak at 2000 in HDR. Around the back, we have a similar 48 megapixel main camera, although there are some differences. For example, the 15 also has action mode and cinematic mode, neither of which you get on the 16E, and also has sensor shift OIS rather than just normal OIS, so the stabilization should be a bit better on here. Again, I'll have to test that in my full review. The E does get one of the new camera features though in the audio mix, so you can go to the gallery afterwards and improve the audio of your videos. You can't do that on the 15. And also, of course, it misses out on that second ultra-wide lens, which also gives you macro photos and videos. They both have USB-C and Wi-Fi 6 and Bluetooth 5.3, although, as I say, the 16E does use Apple's new C1 modem, so that might be more efficient. The 15 does also support MagSafe, which means you can get up to 15 watts of wireless charging, and it's compatible with MagSafe peripherals like wallets and chargers and cases and things. The 16E, bizarrely, does not support MagSafe. It does still have wireless charging, but at a slower 7.5 watts. You can still pay extra to get a MagSafe case, which you can put on top, and then, you know, it will be compatible, but it's an extra step and a bit annoying. But this is where things get interesting, because even though this is more expensive, 100 quid more, this uses the A16 chip rather than the A18, but it also has 8 gigs of RAM rather than 6, which means the 16E does support Apple Intelligence, and this doesn't. And the 16E has a considerably longer battery. Going by Apple's numbers, we're talking 21 hours of streamed video playback versus 16 hours. I would probably go with the 16E over the 15. But then the next question, obviously, is should you go for the 16E or the 16, which is £200 more expensive? I think this is probably what most people are going to be considering if they're upgrading their iPhone. And it's actually quite tricky because on the face of it, there's not a huge amount of difference between the 16 and the E. Yes, we do miss out on the ultra-wide camera like we do with the 15. We also have the dynamic island here rather than the notch, again like the 15. But actually, in terms of the specs, they both have the A18 chip, although the E uses the slightly lower GPU core variant, 4 cores rather than 5 cores. So, well, on paper, this will be 20% faster in terms of graphics, but they both have 8 gigabytes of memory, so they support Apple Intelligence. They both have 128 gigs of storage with the base model. They both have USB-C and the action button and a 48 megapixel main camera, but there are some quite significant differences. Obviously, the main one you'll notice is the lack of the ultra-wide, again, like the 15, but also the main camera, the 48 megapixel main on the 16, benefits from full focus pixels. Also, we have sensor shift OIS, so we have faster focusing, better stabilization. We also get cinematic mode, we get action mode, and we get the revamped photography styles, which was introduced on the 16 series. Obviously, we have MagSafe support, so you can have up to 15 watts of wireless charging, and you can use MagSafe peripherals without the need for an additional case. The 16 screen is also significantly brighter, like the 15. The 16 also looks a little bit smarter. We have a slightly thinner bezel, along with that dynamic island, of course, and we have the camera control button, which maybe is a big deal for you. As someone who uses an iPhone 16 Pro Max every day, I've actually turned it off because I just find it got a little bit annoying for the camera, but it does act as a camera shutter button, and with Apple Intelligence, it doubles as a visual intelligence button, so you can press it and then scan your surroundings and search from that. We also get Wi-Fi 7 with this rather than 6 on the 16E, which uses Apple's own modem, and this has an ultra-wideband chip, or UWB, which we don't get on the 16E, which basically gives you more precise location tracking for Find My devices, or if you're walking up to your car to unlock it with keys or HomeKit. It's not the end of the world, but it is nice to have UWB and Wi-Fi 7. And also, because we have the ultra-wide camera, you can shoot macro photos and videos, and also shoot spatial video if you're one of the 4 people who bought a Vision Pro headset. The 16E also uses the previous generation ceramic shield, so the glass is a little bit tougher on the 16, and it only comes in 2 colors, black or white, whereas you have 5 very snazzy infused colors on the regular 16. So if you want something that's a bit more eye-catching, you have to spend an extra 200 quid. The only 2 downsides to going with the 16 is the fact that obviously it's £200 more expensive, but also the battery life apparently is going to be a little bit better on the 16E. Apple's own numbers again say 21 hours of streamed video versus 18 hours on this guy. So it's a little bit better than the 16, but the 16E seems to be the best unless you go for a Plus or a Pro Max. So with that all said, which one should you actually go for if you're upgrading your iPhone? Well, I'll withhold full judgment until I can do my full review on the 16E, but I think my initial thoughts are that the 15 doesn't make a lot of sense. I'd rather save the 100 and get a better battery and Apple Intelligence and the new chip with the 16E, so probably not the 15, for me at least. The 16 is definitely worth considering, but it is £200 more, and at that point, I actually might consider getting a renewed, or maybe on a deal, 15 Pro. Often it's better to get last generation's Pro model rather than a new regular model, but that's a conversation for another video. Certainly the 16E is a big step up over the 3rd gen SE, and right now it is the cheapest new iPhone you can buy, and I'm excited for it. So make sure you stay tuned for my full review, hit that subscribe button. Thank you so much for watching, guys, and I will see you next time right here on the Tech Chat. Just gonna pop these away. Oh, and don't panic. The Apple polishing cloth is officially compatible with the new 16E. We can rest easy tonight.